Before I get started, I first and foremost just want to say thank you so much to the Food Island Partnership for inviting me to be here today. It's a true honor that I was invited to participate, especially when there's so much culinary talent here on the island. And I also want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to come here. So just a little bit about me. My name is Nick. I was not born on PEI, but I like to think of myself as an islander by choice. This summer, I actually learned how to eat mussels the right way. Now, cheer if you know what I'm talking about. Woo! Okay, so it sounds like some of you don't. So the right way to eat mussels is you have them in front of you and you take one mussel and you use the shell to pick the meat of the other mussels out, and then you take the empty shells and you stack them. It's the neatest little thing, so I thought there would be no better recipe for me to do today than an Italian-inspired mussel dish. And I'm gonna put my own little twist on it and do it in my way, but also in an island way. In order for me to make this mussels and mead bruschetta, I need some beautiful island ingredients. So I have, of course, the mussels. There's gonna be some potatoes, but the real secret killer here is the island honey mead. So this is Sizer, it's an apple mead. It's a really interesting product because it's something that is hyper local, because the same way that wine takes from the soil, it takes from the climate, and it infuses that into the character of the grapes. The bees do the heavy lifting here on the island. They find flowers, they find their pollen, and they bring that back to their hive to make a product that is truly representative of the terroir of where they live. So it's a fabulous thing to include in your cooking, and I'm gonna use it in our recipe today in 3 different ways. The first is going to be as a pickling liquid. So I'm gonna do some pickled shallots, and whenever one thing I'm learning is that when you approach a recipe, it's great to think about the balance of flavors. So for pickled shallots, it's going to add a really nice acidity, a tang, and they're so easy to make. This is just gonna be a quick pickle. You'll see it takes me, I don't know, 2 minutes, but they add so much flavor. You can put them on sandwiches, eggs, they're super versatile, and today we're gonna add it to our mussels and mead bruschetta. So you gotta take your shallot, you just want to slice it into circles. Now they're quite tight and they're going to want to stay together, so pick them apart, spread them out a bit so they can all have great contact with the pickling fluid that we get to. It's great if you wear gloves because the onion smell will kind of stay on your hands for the rest of the day. Okay, so you want to take your rings of shallots and just add it to a jar. And then really simply, you just put a pot on about medium heat. You're gonna add half a cup of white wine vinegar. Some pickling liquids might include water to dilute the vinegar just a little bit, but water is boring, okay? And that's gonna be kind of a theme of today. So when I say, what's water? What are you guys gonna say? It's boring! We're gonna do another half cup of the island honey mead. And as it starts coming up to a simmer, we're going to add a tablespoon of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, and then a tablespoon of peppercorns. And as that starts to heat up, you're gonna see that the salt and the sugar start to dissolve. And the heat is actually gonna work to start pulling some of that flavor out of the peppercorn as well. It's steaming and ready. You're just gonna pour it all over your shallots, okay? It's as easy as that. You're not gonna wanna use this right away because if you use it immediately, it's not gonna have absorbed enough flavor. So I usually give it about time to cool, but give it a night, give it 2 days, it'll take on more of that flavor, and you really wanna taste the honey mead, so just give it a little bit of extra, okay? Next step, we're moving on to red peppers and arugula. So we're gonna start with just a basic red pepper, and we have to de-seed it. So I always chop the bottom and the top off. And if you have a fur baby at home, this is a great treat to them that you could just toss on the floor. But I chop the top and the bottom off, and then I have this, and then I can easily just go in and scoop out the insides. Okay, there's gonna be a little bit left over, and this is the fun part. You just give it a little spank, 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 and the seeds are gone. You're gonna take some olive oil and just brush both sides of your pepper. This will just keep it more moist in the oven. And then we're gonna throw that into a pan. And you're gonna throw this on the highest shelf of your oven, and you're gonna put it on broil. Now, don't be scared. We want these to blacken. And the skins are tough, they're sturdy, they're gonna protect the nice flesh of the pepper that's underneath. So it'll probably take about 10 to 12 minutes, but you're gonna wanna keep your eye on it and make sure you get that real dark color on it. Red peppers that are ready. So you can see what I mean here. The skins are nice and charred, and the flesh underneath is soft, it's sweet, it's moist, and it's perfect for our recipe. Peel the skins off quite easily. What we're left with is just this beautiful fleshy red pepper, because we're going to use it to dress our bruschetta later. So earlier I was talking about balance of flavors in the bruschetta, and I mentioned how the shallots are going to add a tanginess and an acidity. The red peppers are here for sweetness and color, because I'm sure most of us are more familiar with the bruschetta that's onion, garlic, and tomato. And this is gonna not be too shocking because the red peppers are just gonna be posing as tomatoes. So you still have that nice fruity red look as well. But we wanna add some green, especially if you're doing this for a holiday party. You have to have red and green. So we're just gonna take some fresh arugula and chop it so it's pretty close to the same size as the pepper. And you're gonna let those mix together. And easy to eat if you cut everything so it's bite-sized, and it'll stay together as you're enjoying your bites. Potatoes now. Oh, I forgot to tell you about the arugula's flavor. So the arugula has a nice pepperiness. All right, so we have acidity and tang, we have sweetness, we have pepperiness. And now we're gonna do a crispy potato straw that's gonna add texture and saltiness. So take a potato grater, make sure your potato's washed, but you don't need to take the skin off at all. And on the small holes, just start grating. Grate your potato all the way. Tend to find that the bits that don't go through the grater are a little bit plumpier. We want to just separate those out because we want nice, fluffy, airy potato straws for the end. Okay, so in here, you have your grated potatoes. Now this is mission critical right now because you gotta work fast. This happened in my house the first time I tried this. I turned my back on my potatoes for about 3 minutes and I looked at them and they looked like they rusted. So you immediately want to take your potato straws and get them into some cold water and move them around, and you want to wash off all the starch. Take some of the stickiness out and makes them a little more fluffy. Just gonna strain off all that water. You could do this 1 or 2 times, but I would, maybe 3 or 4. I would keep my eye on the water, and you wanna see it kind of rinsing clear, and that tells you that all the starch is out. It's gonna be different depending on how much potato you have versus how much water. But once you're confident that the starch is gone, take your drained potatoes, spread them over a real towel. All right, so you're gonna just put it into a tea towel or a little cloth, and you're gonna squeeze all of the moisture out of the potato. This is gonna help them get a lot crispier when you fry them, okay? And you don't have to worry. I know right now we have these like small little slices of potato, but they can take it. They're tough. They're island tough. So squeeze them hard and just watch all of that extra moisture come out of them. But once you stop seeing water drip out, you know that your potatoes are ready for the final drying. Take your potatoes, and now we're gonna put them over the paper towel. Okay, spread them out. Drying it is all about surface area, so you wanna make sure that there aren't any large clumps. Then put another bit of paper towel over top and just roll it up. Okay, and give it another squeeze. And you'll see that this time there's no water dripping out. I'm not even seeing moisture on the paper towel, so you know these potatoes are dry and they're ready to go into the fryer. In your pot, you're gonna wanna add some vegetable oil, and you only want about 2 inches in the bottom. There is a risk that when you put the potato in it, the moisture that is still left in there is gonna cause it to kind of bubble up. So you don't want your oil to be too high in the pot, because if it does bubble up, it's gonna bubble over, and that, from experience, is not good. So just a little bit of oil. You can always do a couple batches of your potatoes. And I like to bring my oil up to about 400 degrees. What I find is a good temperature for frying is about 350. But when you add the potato to the oil, you're gonna drop the temperature of it. So if you only bring the oil to 350 and you throw your potato in, it's gonna drop to 225, and then you're gonna have to wait a little bit, and they won't get as crispy as fast. Because of the whole bubbling over risk, you're gonna wanna go a little bit at a time, especially if you're new to frying at home. So sprinkle in a bit of your potato. Right now it's going and it's bubbling, and then you're starting to get excited, you know you're safe. So you start adding more, and you put the rest in. You wanna keep the potatoes moving so that they're not sticking together, and so they're frying evenly. And you're gonna wanna watch for kind of like a lightly golden color on the outside before you take like a mesh strainer that's small enough to go in and start pulling them out. These are your crispy potato straws. But when you get it out of the oil, another important part, you want to get salt on them right away. Because if you wait for them to dry, the salt isn't going to stick. But if they still have some of that moisture and that heat from the oil, the salt will dissolve and incorporate into the potatoes a lot better. Okay? You can set your potatoes aside because they're just going to be used as a garnish at the end. Acidity with the shallots, sweetness with the pepper, pepperiness with the arugula, saltiness and crunch from the potato. And now we need bread. So never, ever, ever let bread be an afterthought. For today, I prepared something special for you. I've made a honey mead sourdough. So how did I make a honey mead sourdough? Well, in sourdough we have water, flour, and salt. But what do we think of water? Oh, it's boring! But it is necessary in baking, so you have to just be careful if you want to replace it with something else. But I found I could put about 100 grams of the apple honey mead into my sourdough, and it doesn't impact the way it cooks, the way it rises. In fact, it makes it even better. So that's going to be the foundation of our mussels and mead bruschetta. And now for the star, we have our mussels. So here we have some PEI mussels. Only the best, of course. To start, you're going to get your pot heating, and you're going to add a 1/4 cup of olive oil. Okay, you want that oil to get nice and warm, but you don't want to see it steam. You don't want to see it boil. You want to keep it, just get it warm. Once your oil moves, you know you're ready to add some shallots. So we just have some diced shallots here. This is about 1 large shallot. Throw it right into the oil. If you hear a little sizzle when it hits, that's a good sign. If you hear a loud sizzle, you might need to turn the heat down. Work quickly here. Once you give the shallots a little bit of time to turn translucent and just heat up and get soft, you're gonna wanna add some thyme and oregano. The oils from the herbs, and that's really gonna create a great depth of flavor in the liquid that we're gonna be steaming our mussels in. You could also add water to this at this point, but what's water? Boring. It's boring, so we're adding honey mead, which is even better. Now, I know a lot of you are probably familiar with adding wine to your mussels, and this works the exact same way. It has that nice acidity. There's some sweetness from the honey. There's some flavor from the apples. It's like PEI. Can you smell it? Your liquid is ready for the mussels. So you're gonna take them, pour them in, and make sure you give it a really good stir, because you don't want the mussels just sitting on top of the liquid. You want the liquid to go around and inside. So just try to work it all through, because if you see that there's bits of shallot on every mussel, it means you've done a good job. When it comes to mussels, they're ready when they open. However, for an application like this, I like to go a little bit longer than just being open. So as you cook a mussel, the longer it's cooking, the smaller it gets, the firmer it gets, and the drier it gets. So if we think about the spectrum of that, if you take your mussel when it just opens, it'll be very moist, it'll almost fall apart, very juicy and very flavorful as well. Let's say we left them on there for 20 minutes, they're gonna shrivel up, they're gonna get firm, and they're gonna be dry. So think about your own personal taste and where you want to be on that spectrum, and just keep an eye on them. You can always take one mussel out, give it a taste, and see if it's right for whatever application you're doing. But I like them to be just a little bit more firm for the mussels in mead bruschetta, because we're not going to be eating them from the shell, in that we're not going to be eating them the right way, like we learned earlier. We're going to be de-shelling them and letting them steep in the broth for just a little bit before we put them onto the bruschetta. So you can see there, they're just starting to open. Okay, so it looks like the mussels are done. If you start seeing mussels falling out of the shell, that's probably a clear sign that they're the right level of doneness as well. And what you're gonna wanna do next is take them and just pour them into a bowl and let them cool. Have to come all the way down to room temperature. They just need to be cold or cool enough for you to handle with your fingers. Left to go. So here I have about 5 pounds of mussels that have been taken from their shells, and they are resting in the broth that we cooked them in. This gives them a really good chance to marinate, so we make sure that all that flavor that we worked so hard to put in actually ends up being reflected in the meat. We assemble the bruschetta. Sourdough. My favorite way to toast the bread is to brush it with olive oil and then pan fry it. I find it can get a little bit dry in a toaster or in the oven, and I really like the way that olive oil and the pan interact to kind of just sear the bread and make it nice and crispy, while the inside is still spongy and fluffy. Dressing it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take a little bit of that mussel broth and pour it over your bread. Another reason why the sourdough works so great for this is because it's sturdy. It has some density to it, so you're going to be able to add that moisture to it for the flavor without the bread getting soggy and falling apart as you eat it, because it's not a very good vessel if you pick it up and it crumbles. Use a sturdy bread, so if you want to add some moisture, it won't disintegrate. Okay, so we take our bread and then we top it with some of that red pepper and arugula mixture. then we're gonna go in with our PEI mussels. Now that the mussels are on, we're gonna just finish it with our crispy potato straws. And some of our pickled shallots. Definitely overpower the other ingredients, so we want to make sure that we're giving the mussels and the mead a chance to shine, and that every other ingredient in there gets to do its part without being overpowered. Okay, so here we are.